Very fashionable today. Grapes and pomegranates. At any rate, from time immemorial, these have been known as the Perish and Ishtav Chabaris. So the first halachic manifestation that we see that's loaded with meaning and symbolism, obviously, is that this requires a special blessing. For some of these 7 species, a Torah level blessing, in contradistinction to all the other blessings that only have rabbinic origin. The other thing is this. Take a look a little bit further in Deuteronomy. The beginning of Parshas Kisavo, page 989. Okay? As usual, good old Rabbi Kaplan does the heavy lifting for us. He gives the chapter a title and he calls it First Fruits. Section 119 is First Fruits. Okay? I'm not going to read all the psukim. Suffice to say as follows. There's a mitzvah. There are many agrarian mitzvahs. Okay? One of the things, last week's parsha we had, Moshe Rabbeinu is on the cusp. He's right there at the border of the land of Israel. And it's one of the most poignant passages in the entire Bible where the great leader, Moshe Rabbeinu, if ever a man deserved for a job well done, to have his heart's desire fulfilled, you would think it would be Moshe Rabbeinu. He beseeches God, please let me into the land. And our sages asked, what did Moshe Rabbeinu need to go into the land for? He wanted to sit under his fig tree. He wanted to tend his vineyard. He wanted to be a big landowner. What's felt the mice? We would say, what's he lacking? He had a very fulfilled and fulfilling life. What does he need to be in the land of Israel for? And our sages tell us, because what?
All the blessings that he could do, all the mitzvahs he could do.
That's the point. All the mitzvahs he could do. There are many mitzvahs that are only possible to fulfill, and that's all. I mean, I'd say it even more sharply, and I think more accurately. The place for the Torah to be actualized is the land of Israel. You cannot have a fully realized Torah, or for that matter, even a Torah lifestyle, outside the land of Israel. Because so many of the mitzvahs are agrarian in nature, depend on Jewish monarchy, depend on the existence of a temple, depend on a legal system called a Sanhedrin that presupposes Jewish autonomy and self-determination. None of these things are possible in the diaspora. These things can only take place in the land of Israel. But in particular, when we talk about the mitzvahs of the land of Israel, what we think of in our minds are the agrarian, the mitzvahs, what are called the mitzvah tlius ba'aretz, the mitzvahs that apply to farming and to the produce of the land of Israel. So, one of these, perhaps the most famous or the fondest one in the Jewish imagination, is the first fruits. And basically what that is that it's a farming society. Most of the tribes were not ranchers. Certainly only one of the tribes really were seafaring international businessmen. Most of the tribes were homesteaders, farming their plots of land. And every farmer goes through his agricultural year. He's got his plowing season, his planting season, his harvesting season, and so on and so forth. And you have new fruits every year. The first fruits, when your trees, when your orchards start to blossom, when your vineyards start to blossom, okay, these fruits are brought as a gift to God, and it's given at the temple to the Kohanim, to the priests of the temple, of the Beis HaMikdash. But which fruits? If I'm growing guava in Eretz Yisrael, if I'm growing bananas in Eretz Yisrael, if I'm growing potatoes, okay, strawberries, and almost today, in modern Israel, almost any kind of fruit or vegetable that you can imagine grows in Israel. They grow apples, they have peaches. I think they export tulips to Holland. I mean, it's remarkable what grows in the land of Israel. Do I bring of my first fruits to the Kohen? The answer is no. The only thing that you bring to the Kohen that's a gift that's most identified with the land of Israel are these 7 species. It's all the perush and the shtabchu ben haaretz. Okay? So, I guess we have to say that these perush and the shtabchu ben haaretz, these 7 species, again, just to enumerate again, they are wheat, barley, grapes, dates, olives, pomegranates, and figs. Okay, I don't know if I said them over in order. Those are the 7 species. So from those 7 species, when exactly how it works with the grain slips my mind at the moment, but all the other ones that are fruits, when the first trees in your orchard start to blossom, it's just kosher gemi, you could put some kind of a rubber or some kind of a ribbon around those trees, so you know they were the first ones to bring forth buds and blossoms, and it's the fruits of those trees that you bring as a gift of Bikurim to the Beis HaMikdash. Okay. Take a few minutes before I show you my next reference. Just take a few minutes to scan it yourself. Read on page from 989 from verse 1. Read till 999 verse 11. Just read it to yourself. I just want to turn on. I'm feeling very stuffy. I want to put on another air conditioner.
Till 999.
I can't take off the jacket. It's unprofessional. That I can't do.
Listen, that today's new is not about the 3 years from the product to the food.
Right. That's a different mitzvah. That's something called Arla.
Okay.
And that's true even in Chutz La'aretz. That's not mitzvah. Yeah, it's not just Israel. That's all over.
But also, it's very important, I think, it is said that when we eat fruit or anything, we have to say a brocha before, because everything belongs to Hashem, and if you don't say a brocha, you are a thief.
Oh, Mrs. Bennett, you're always stealing my whole class. What are you going to do? Okay, hopefully most of the other students were distracted reading. Didn't hear what you said. You're gonna steal my whole thunder tonight.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Forgive me. This young man would like to know that, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, that which is the hind like what the Rabbi is going to be. What is that thing that is not kosher to use from the meat? What does it mean? Hind like
What cuts it?
What the hindquarters are?
Yeah.
If that's the kosher butcher. I mean, if you want to know what kind of cuts, I think like porterhouse, T-bone, anything that comes from the leg or the rump, a rump roast, something like that. And they're prohibited for 2 different prohibitions. One is chaylev, one is forbidden fats, and one is the gid hanasha, the sciatica nerve that runs through the thigh leg. It's not cost effective it's called treber to devein it, to get rid of it. The other blood vessels, they do get rid of it. It's labor costs are too high. It's just not cost effective. So some of them are forbidden because of forbidden fats, and some of them are forbidden because of what's called the gid hanasha. Okay, everyone's more or less read, has a basic idea now in what Bikurim is, how you bring it, who you bring it, the declaration you make, when you bring it. Okay, fine. Now,
Is there a certain time?
take a look over here.
You have to bring it on a certain point of time that's new food, or every time that it's a new food.
Every year. It's an annual mitzvah.
But when you have to bring it sukkahs
The sukkah is the deadline. Yeah, you can bring it as soon as the fruits ripen, and the deadline is sukkahs.
And it's a total product?
Sukkahs? No, what am I talking about? Schwartz, Chag HaBikurim. Right.
And it's a total product, produce, or a portion of it?
It's the first fruits of only these 7 species that the land of Israel is praised with.
What I'm saying, if you have a large spread of pomegranate trees,
So it's those
of all
3.
the trees?
No. It's the 3 or 4 trees in your orchard that bloom first. That you mark those trees, and the fruits from those trees, those are the ones that you bring as the gift.
Of the 5 species.
Right. If you're a farmer who doesn't have any of these species,
Right, like
you're
apples, peaches,
you're off the hook. Right. If you only raise pomegranates, obviously you're not going to be bringing bikurim from grapes.
No, but what about which Shemitah this year?
Right.
When farmers who don't do the 5 species, let's say they're not.
Well, let's put it this way: it's a different question for grain farmers, and it's a different question for farmers that maintain orchards. Grain farmers in the Shemitah year don't have a new crop to bring first fruits from.
Okay.
Those fields have to be sown anew every year, right? You're talking about the ones who've got vineyards and who've got pomegranate orchards where it's automatic. And obviously, in a non-Shemitah year, when you're cultivating, when you're pruning, when you're spraying insecticides and fertilizers, you have a bigger crop, but you're not going to have no crops in Shemitah year.
Okay.
So you want to know how Bikurim is dealt with in a Shemitah year?
Well, no, I was wondering is, let's say you have apples, let's say you're an apple orchard, that's it. You don't have...
You're off the hook.
Okay, that's what I wanted. I thought it was every...
You're off the hook for Bikurim. You're not off the hook for Shemitah. Shemitah applies to all produce.
That's what I wanted.
Okay, right. Right. Bikurim is something that's specific to this. Okay, now take a look. Oh gosh, too many biblical references tonight. The promised land was promised already to the patriarchs. But in terms of a national promise, here's the first promise of the promised land. Exodus 3:8. I'll get you the page number in a second. 271, I believe. No, 269. 269. Okay. This is the revelation at the burning bush. God is revealing himself to Moshe Rabbeinu for the first time. Through the 269.
269.
Right. 269. And this is verse 8. I have come down to rescue them from Egypt's power. I will bring them out of that land to a good, spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, the territory of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites. Okay, those are the 7 indigenous nations of Canaan, the land of Canaan. So, it's said as part and parcel of the Exodus experience. The Exodus is not just to liberate them from slavery and then you're on your own. Right? The purpose of the liberation is to bring them to the good land, to this land flowing with milk and honey. Right? I've come down to rescue them from Egypt's power. I will bring them out of the land to a good, spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey. Now, keep your finger on that place, but turn back again to 991. This is something called vidui bikurim. When a person brings his bikurim and he sets the basket down in the temple and gives it to the Kohen, he makes a declaration. And listen to this part of the declaration. Verse 8 on page 991. God then brought us out of Egypt with a strong hand and an outstretched arm, with great visions and with signs and miracles. He brought us to this area, giving us this land flowing with milk and honey. I am now bringing the first fruit of the land that God has given me. Promise made, Exodus 3:8. Promise fulfilled, Deuteronomy, what chapter is it? 26:9. You hear how it resonates? At the burning bush, God is promising Moshe Rabbeinu, why am I taking them out of Egypt? To bring them to this land flowing with milk and honey. When the person brings Bikurim, he recounts, he recapitulates the whole sordid history of the Jewish people up until that point. Who knows, maybe when Mashiach comes, when we make Vida Bikurim, we'll talk about the Holocaust too. I don't know. But at any rate, here he's talking about how we went down as a small band into this land because of a famine, and when we were persecuted and we were enslaved, and God took us out with great miracles, and He brought us to a land flowing with milk and honey. Now, in the English translation, it says it in the third person. I am now bringing the first fruit of the land that God has given me. The grammatical quirk is that in the Hebrew, he says that you have given to me, God. All of a sudden, he's not talking to the Kohen and referring to God in third person. He's talking to the Kayan, but he's not really. He's really talking to God. That you have given me. And then it ends with that you shall set down the basket before your Lord, and shall bow down before your Lord, and so on, etc. So, what I want to point out is like this. Rav Tzadok HaKayan of Lublin says an amazing thing. We know, and we read this before in other classes, that because the land of Israel is such a good and broad land, because the land that has these 7 species in it, well, let's face it, when we say 7 species, we really mean it's got it all. I'm not enough of a plant botanist or plant biologist to describe how this is like the most holistic and wholesome vegan diet out there, right? But I understand that if Eretz Yisrael is God's great gift to His chosen people, then there's something special. Even if I don't know all the Kabbalistic or nutritional secrets of these particular 7 species, I know there's a lot to them. There's something there. And this is where Rabbi Tzadok HaKayan of Lublin says it, but let me just reiterate something first from the Sefer Derech Hashem, from the works of the Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. The Jewish people are basically considered a second edition of humanity. They're humanity's last best choice. What God had originally intended for Adam and Eve to do before the fall, before they sinned in the Garden of Eden and were expelled from the Garden of Eden, that now becomes the collective mission of the Jewish people. There was a time when humanity was in flux, where again could have been the mission of all of humanity, but basically starting from the Tower of Babel, the Ramchal says, until the revelation at Sinai, the mission kind of got quantified. We got chosen, for better or for worse, to carry out this mission. So we're collectively, as it were, a second edition of the creation of Adam and Eve. The parallels are striking. Just as Adam and Eve get put in a habitat that's identified by its produce, by its trees. I said over several weeks ago, the insight of Rabbi Simcha and the Meshech Chachma, where the command in the Torah, Mikol Eitz Hagan Achal Teichel, eat, surely you shall eat from all the fruits of the garden, is basically a command, enjoy yourself. It's not just utilitarian, it's not there to keep you alive. It's there to please you. It's the name of the place. It's the Garden of Eden. Eden in Hebrew means to pamper yourself. That's the function of the place. Right? Nevertheless, we also know that it was a place where Adam and Eve had to work, had to do their divine service. God puts Adam and Eve into the garden, avdo l'shamra, to work it and to guard it. Our sages teach us to work it, it's a positive commandment. To guard it, that's a negative commandment. Don't do anything that will mess it up. That we know they failed. And the penalty of failure was expulsion. Similarly, this new recast man / human, Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, also has a natural habitat. That natural habitat is the land of Israel. And the land of Israel has every idun, has every pampering thing available that the person could possibly want. I think it's the Ramban that says, one second, let me just check it out, make sure I'm quoting this right. Svarna. When we read that verse about the 7 species, so first it says 5 of them, and then again it says Eretz, a land that has oils of olive and honey figs. So it says the first 5 are just nutritional. They're the staples of life. Good balanced nutrition. The last 2, those are already luxuries. He calls them Madane Melech, the pampering of kings. Oil and honey. Oil and fig honey. At any rate, be that as it may, I say again, the parallels are striking. Israel is also, in a certain sense, a lush garden. We talk about the rivers flowing through it, like the 4 rivers that flowed out of Eden. We talk about the produce that's there. And again, the penalty for messing up is expulsion. That's why we have galus. That's why we have exile. That's why we have a diaspora. Says Rabbi Tzadok kind of a little bit. He says, every possible idun, every possible Epicurean delight, if you will, is there in the land of Israel. If you know how to cultivate it, if you know how to farm the land, if you do your part, there is no more bountiful land on earth. It's an earthly Eden. It can be an earthly Eden. But there's a great danger there. The danger is you get very coarse and very materialistic and very carnal. Right? It's a big problem. We read before, I think the class I gave before Tisha B'Av, I think I read you the verse, one of the preamble verses to the Teicha is Vayishman Yeshur and Vayiva. Jeshurun, that's a nickname for the Jewish people, got fat, and they kicked and they rebelled. Getting fat, getting pampered, getting spoiled in a certain sense, is the first misstep down that slippery slope that leads to rebellion against God. Says Reb Tzadok HaKayin. How do we prevent that? So now, even though Mrs. Bennett interjected already, I want to say it over a little bit more fully and apply it to Bikurim. The Talmud poses this contradiction. On the one hand, it says, LaHashem ha'aretz umlo. Unto God is the earth and all its fullness and everything that's in the earth. There's another verse that says, Hashamayim shamayim LaHashem, v'ha'aretz nasan le'adam. The heavens are God's heavens, but the land was given to man. So who does the land belong to? Does it belong to God or does it belong to man? One verse says, unto God is the land in all its fullness. And another verse says, the land was given to the children of man, the human beings. So, the way the Talmud resolves this contradiction says, Kan kodem bracha, kan lacher bracha. Before a blessing, everything belongs to God. Everything is consecrated material. After a blessing, now you may eat. Now God has given it over to you. Talmud says it very starkly, Kol nehenem in olam hazeh b'li bracha kilu ma'ah. Anyone who derives pleasure or benefit from this world without first making the proper benediction, the proper bracha, it's as if they had expropriated consecrated property, a very great sin. Kilu ma'ah. What's a bracha? Says Reb Tzadok. Unfortunately, for most of us, it's like this little incantation we mumble unconsciously, especially if we're from birth and have repeated the bracha 20 or 30,000 times in our life or more. Right? As one person described to me, complained to me, he says, I don't daven anymore, I mumble with my tefillin on. It's sad but true. But that's not what a bracha is supposed to be. A bracha is an interface with God, and when you recognize that it's His, that's when it becomes yours. That's the trade-off. That's how God operates. When you say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech, blessed art thou our Lord, King of the universe, who created the fruit of the tree, the fruit of the ground, the fruit of the vine, who brought forth bread from the earth, however you finish off the bracha. But the standard template for every bracha is, you are the source of this. He says, do you want to know how pampering yourself and luxuriating yourself will not make you coarse and will not make you carnal? When you plug it back into God. He says one of the characteristics of Eretz Yisrael is that you don't have that disconnect. For most of us, most of our lives, if we're successful at all, we fall into this trap of egocentricity, of self-reliance. It's me, me, me. I'm a success. I did this for myself. What does God have to do with this? I did this with my smarts and with my sweat equity. I worked hard, I worked smart, and that's why I have everything that I have. Right? The idea that even after all the smarts and even after all the hard work, that ultimately it all comes from God, that's something that's unique to Eretz Yisrael. And there's something about the fruits of Eretz Yisrael. It's identified with the produce of Eretz Yisrael, that a person can come. And remember, this isn't like us. You know, we're not so humble. Maybe we're not religious people, okay? But we get the warm fuzzies for our Korean greengrocer, right? Oh man, you cut up the kiwis and the melons so nice. What would I do with that? Your produce is always so fresh. Or if we have a good fishmonger, we get our fish never has that fishy smell. Oh, you're great. You get up early to go down to the Fulton Sea Market for the fish market for me. I'm so thankful to you. God has nothing to do with it, but the retailers at least maybe have something to do with it, right? You're talking about an agrarian society over here, okay? This guy pushed the plow. He sowed the seeds, right? He spread the manure. You should excuse me if he had to. It's a famous story that they tell over that one time President Truman, he was from Missouri, one of these plain states, and he was showing a foreign dignitary, one of these expansive, the Midwestern plain states, they have these farms that just, miles and miles of miles and miles, corn rows as far as the eye can see. So this foreign dignitary was saying, well, this must be the breadbasket of the United States. It's so impressive, what your agribusiness must be. Huge. How many acres is this? So I know, some aide of the president says how many acres it is, and then the president remarks. He says, "You have any idea how much manure it took to cover those fields?" So an aide, leans over to Bessie Truman and says, "Mrs. President, can't you teach the president to say fertilizer instead of manure?" And she turns to him and says, "You know how long it took me to teach him to say manure?" And anyway, forgive me for telling a joke like that with Opal Chamashim on the table, but I couldn't resist. At any rate, this guy has pushed so hard. He's worked hard. I don't know how smart they could work in an ancient agrarian society. There were no combines. There were no, there were no steam shovels, to put the furrows in your field for you. Your ox pulled the plow and you pushed the plow. What kind of sweat equity this guy invested? And this guy can say, when bringing the 7 fruits indigenous or identified with the land of Israel, the fruits that collectively make this land the fulfillment of the promise of the land of milk and honey, right? I showed you the parallel between God's promise to bring them to the land of milk and honey, and Bikurim, which is limited only to the honey of the figs and the other 7 fruits. And the fellow says, while he's in the middle of talking to the Kayan, he says, Va'ata, hinei veisi es reishis pri ha'adam asher nasata li Hashem. Hashem nasan li Hashem, not in third person, that God gave to me. He's speaking now directly to God. You gave it to me. There's no disconnect. You're not remote. You're not out of the room. Okay, what's the difference in grammar between first person I, you, and him? Or I, you, and she, or her, or her. Okay? In Hebrew grammar, that's called Loshan Nochach and Loshan Nista. In English, it's called first, second, or third person. But I think the Hebrew grammar captures a little bit more accurately. Second person is Nochach, is present. You're talking to somebody who's in the room with you. If I could say you, you're here. I'm here, and you're here. Once we're talking about him, okay, even if they're at the other end of the room, okay, but if you're referring to the third person, they're not here. They're not present. You're not talking to them. You're talking about them, but you're not talking to them. So when he says, Hashem nasatali, that you have given to me, Hashem, there's that connection. You gave it. If you gave it, I'm back in Eden. Your shechina, your proximity, your indwelling is the way, it's the fancy King James way to translate the word shechina. Shechina is B'Loshen Shochin. You're my neighbor. You're right next to me. Your proximity is palpable. Your involvement in all of this is palpable. My food, my sustenance, this agrarian society that we built, that we live off of our fields, I understand that my life comes from you. The medium, the thing that gives me my life, are these fruits. But who gave me the fruits? You gave me the fruits. My father's a great brother used to tell me in Yiddish, at least in his part of Eastern Europe, they referred to a grocery store. Mr. Bennett, you'll tell me if in your part of Europe it's the same thing. A Lebensmittelgeschäft. Is that what they call the grocery store? Lebensmittel means a means of life store. That was their word for a supermarket, for a grocery store. The means of life. But the source of life is God. And says Rabbi Tzadok, there's no disconnect. That's what the Peiros of Eretz Yisrael are all about, and that's how they avoid being megashem, making the person coarse or material or carnal. If you put God out of the equation, then living large, as it were, living off the fat of the land, makes you a coarse person. If you live and you understand that all of your work and all the produce, all the food, all of your eating comes directly from God, and He gives it to you by that largesse when you recognize Him, the same dynamic, the same mechanism as when we make a bracha before eating, make a benediction before eating, then the land of Israel becomes a garden of Eden and of spirituality and holiness. Yes?
Because without the rain what Hashem gives, if He wouldn't give, He wouldn't have any food from the land.
Right.
Number one. Number two, if God doesn't give us koyach to get up in the morning and do that hard work, without that, this hard work, and that gives us energy to...
Okay, that's a Torah / Eretz Yisrael sensibility. But a lot of people who get up in the morning think that they're getting up in the morning because, they have a good diet and a good exercise regimen and a forceful personality. And that's the attitude that we're trying to avoid.
And it's happening in America that because Hashem gives us maybe a richness, that we lost here more Jews still now than because by Hitler. Because we have the richness here.
Good point. But again, America is not the land of Israel. That's what I'm trying. That's what I'm trying to bring out.
That's what happens when we have it good. Hashem has a big problem with us.
Okay, there's not a lot of time left. I just want to share with you some of the commentaries, what some of the commentaries have said about the Peiros of Ishtabku Ben Aretz, these 7 species that are special to the land of Israel, specific to the land of Israel. So again, let's take a look. Chapter 8, verse 8 in Dvarim. We don't have to flip too many pages. Page 909. Okay. The Hebrew reads as follows. Okay, you're going to have to take my word for it. Sol the news is here tonight to corroborate. So take my word for it over here. The Hebrew verse 8 reads as follows. Eretz, Chita, Usa'ira. V'gefen, Usa'ena, V'rima. Eretz, Zeis, Shemen, Udvash. There are 7 species described in the verse, but there are 10 Hebrew words. The Baal HaTurim says that from these 10 verses, I learn out 10 mitzvahs that are done. The reason that the Torah broke it up this way, right? There are apparently at least two redundant words in this verse. The word Eretz, a land of, is repeated twice, right? And also, the verse that says, Zay Shemen, well, I know olives have oil, because you just said Zayis, Eretz Zayis. To say oil-producing olives is, again, a bit of a redundancy. Bottom line is, it ends up being 10 different verses. Says the Baal HaTurim, that this alludes to 10 separate mitzvahs that are done in producing bread. The pasuk starts with bread, and there are 10 separate mitzvahs. I want to read you directly from the Baal HaTurim, because if I try to do it from memory, I'm going to mess it up. I'm not going to remember all 10. Give me just a moment.
I have it in my
Yes.
the 7 spaces, because I have to know when I have to say different.
Right. Okay, I'm not talking about the brachas right now. This is an allusion to particular brachas. Okay, here they are. Lo sachrash b'shav v'chamar yachdav. You should not plow your field with a ox and a mule and a donkey, I should say, tethered to the same yoke. Lo says v'kilayim. You shouldn't mix wheat wheat seeds, wheat kernels, and grapes. You shouldn't sow wheat in a vineyard. You shouldn't start planting new vines in a wheat field. That's number 2. Leket. Leket is a law of there's certain, when you're harvesting, there's a certain amount of dropped stalks that are supposed to be left as gifts to the poor. That's called leket. Shikha is things that you forgot behind, that you left behind your back. That's also a gift to the poor. Peah, a corner of your field is supposed to remain unharvested, another gift to the poor. Okay, we're up to 5. Lo saksam. Okay, lo saksam sharbadisho is the archetypal negative commandment. We learn out the penalty of all negative commandments from this. This is when you're already holding by threshing. In the ancient world, again, they didn't have these big farm combines. They threshed with animal power. For those of you who are not familiar with threshing is a step in wheat production before milling, where you've got to loosen up the husk, the chaff, from the wheat germ, from the kernel. Okay, and the way that's done is by applying pressure. And the way they used to do it is, think of an Italian winery with people stomping on the grapes. Okay, over here wasn't people, it was animals, and the animals are stomping on the wheat kernels. And that would loosen them up. And there was another step after that, winnowing, where we throw it up into the wind, and the wind would blow the chaff off. But that's called disha, and when you do that with the animals, you're not allowed to muzzle the animals. If you do that, it's a corporal offense. That's another mitzvah.
Because if the animals want to eat, they can eat from it.
Exactly. We actually learn, it's interesting, we learn out a lot of human labor law from this as well, that fruit harvesters are allowed to eat of the fruits that they're picking while they're picking them. Yeah.
Is that in U.S. law?
No, that's not U.S. law, it's in Torah law.
It's Torah law.
Yeah, I don't know, I have no idea. It probably depends on what any particular union collectively bargained. I really don't know. Okay. Truma. Truma is the agricultural produce gift that you give to the Kohanim, not the first fruits I was talking about. Truma is, after you've harvested, you have to give a certain fraction, a certain portion to the Kohanim. Ma'aser Rishon, the first tithe is a 10% skimming of the produce that you've got to give to the Levite. And Ma'aser Sheni, that's another 10% that you've got to take to Jerusalem and consume it there. The challah, and finally, we call the braided loaves that we eat on Shabbos, we call them challah. It's not the name of the bread, it's the name of the mitzvah you do with the bread. When you need a certain amount of dough, that too, you've got to take off a little portion and give it to the Kohen. Today we burn it, we don't give it to the Kohen because it can only be eaten in ritual purity, and because we lack certain accoutrements of the purification process, we're all impure on a certain level, so it gets burned. But in the first place, it's a gift to the Kohen. So there are 10 things in bread production, 10 mitzvahs that you can do. Some are negative commandments, some are positive commandments, but there's a total of 10. Baal Turim says that's why there are 10 words in this verse.
The
8th and 9th was the Maasros, Ma'aser Rishon and Sheni, the first Ma'aser and the second Ma'aser.
The Levite and the Kohen, because they had no land, so they made their living from this.
Exactly. Right. They were the landless tribe, so they had to be supported by public largesse, by gifts. Okay. And finally, just to end with one last thought of the supernatural, if you will, nature of the fruits of the land of Israel. The first 2 of the 7 fruits are grains, wheat and barley. The primary thing that we make out of wheat and barley is bread. Wheat bread and barley bread. Barley bread is not too common in the modern diet, but apparently was common in the ancient world. So there are many midrashim, Yalkut Shlemani, Bereshit Rabbi, a lot of different midrashim scattered throughout the midrashic literature that talks about God's propensity to reward mida keneged mida, quid pro quo. He doesn't just reward, he rewards poetically. You do something good, he repays you, and he repays you in kind. So, it says that when the angels came to visit Abraham after his circumcision, So Abraham, looking at these angels in the guise of men, says, take a pita, a loaf of bread, and satiate your heart, satiate your souls with this bread I'm going to give you. And he gave them bread. It was fresh baked bread. He gave them bread. That was part of the meal he gave them, was bread. The angels, in a certain sense, are the children of God. They're the most spiritual of God's creatures. They're most close to Him, if you will, in terms of spirituality, pure spirituality. So, God says as follows: you gave a meal, you sustained, as it were, my children, even though they didn't need it, and even though you may not have been aware that they were angels, but that's what you did. I will sustain your children. In the desert, He gave them manna bread, and then the Midrashim go on to say, and what happened when the manna bread ended? How did God continue His promise to Abraham that just as you gave bread to the angels, I will give bread to your children? This verse: I gave you a land of wheat and barley, etc. Make bread from these products, from these grains. That's how God is repaying Abraham in kind. What I take out of this is that there's a straight line, in a certain sense, connecting the manna bread of the wilderness to the bread that's produced in the land of Israel. Bread that we get from Kansas and Missouri, from that wheat, or even from Jersey, it may look the same, may in quantitative analysis by a chemist or by a food nutritionist, it may be very similar to wheat that's produced in Eretz Israel. But I don't think we would say about the wheat that's produced in New Jersey that that's a direct line of compensation for the good deeds that Abraham did. Okay, I hope this series has, without getting into the nitty-gritty of the kosher diet, I hope it's enlightened you a little bit about the Torah's attitude towards food, time, place, combinations, and so on and so forth. And have a wonderful next week and end of your summer.